So, first of all, who are we? Why is some random Brit from East London talking to you on the camera, talking about coding, and what is Coding with Codex? And who are we? Founded in 2018, we are a social enterprise based here out of the UK, and our mission is to make technical education more accessible for all. The way we do that is that we go into various different enterprise learning and upskilling programs. So, for example, we're talking here. However, we also work with companies such as Google, Capgemini, State Farm, Thomson Reuters, and a whole host of other large corporations. And then we take that money and we fund it back into what are known as our Tech for Good programs. So as you can see on the bottom left-hand side of the screen, that is where we actually go into schools here in the UK and we teach young children who are neurodiverse how to code and provide them with employable skills. And we also then redistribute all budgets and revenue that we make as a company to then actually finance more Tech for Good programs, working with various charities and social enterprises. So by you being here today, you are directly funding access to the same programs to people who wouldn't traditionally have access to it. So you don't know me, I don't know you, but I just want to say a big thank you for turning up and you're making impact and you're having a really solid impact. Thank you, Dan, for just being here. So pat yourself on the back because really, really cool stuff to see. How do these sessions work? It's going to be the same time every single week through the Community Line Academy. Each session is recorded, and one of the reasons why we do ask you to check in at the beginning of the session is that we can ensure that not only we can monitor how many sessions you've turned up to, if you need to catch up on any and whatnot, but also that means we can send you the recordings for each session along with all links that are shared in the hour. Now, there's a lot of stuff going to be thrown at you guys. Do not worry, it's all going to be shared in the chat, and also at the end of the session, you'll have access to our content center. You'll be able to find recordings, links shared, you find check-in links, and also to see what people have actually done with this course, because it's all well and fine me saying, hey, you're going to learn this fantastic stuff, but where do you go after that? What happens after? And so that's the main thing we really want to try and support you all in your learning journey as you get to grips with the weird and wacky world of generative AI. Thumbs up if that made sense. And sounds good. Thumbs down if you have any immediate questions, or you may need to let it marinate just a little bit. Please do feel free to pop thumbs up in the chat and whatnot. Wonderful. Wonderful. All right then. So let's jump into it. What is AI? Um, I think this is where I could give you a really convoluted, difficult technical answer. For some context, my background is I used to be a software engineer. I have a degree in computer science, and I could talk to the kingdom come about all the mathematical and weird and wacky stuff when it comes to AI. But a real simple and fairly straightforward explanation is that AI or artificial intelligence is when machines learn, think, and do things that usually require human intelligence. And so essentially, if you want a very simplistic way to look at it, and very just sort of easy and approachable way, it's essentially having a robot assistant that can help you. For those of you who watch iRobot, just think of it like that, but there's no humanoid yet. It's still currently in stage one where it just sort of lives online. And that's sort of like the basic premise of it. But then, going into examples of AI in everyday life, it actually precedes sort of the advent of ChatGPT and Gemini and Bard and Perplexity and Claude and all these different wacky services that we're seeing now and being thrusted upon us by our employers and sort of our friends and our friends' grandmas as everyone seems to get to grips with an AI tool that they prefer. But we've had AI in our ecosystem for years now. And so personal assistants such as Siri and Alexa use artificial intelligence to understand commands. Social media platforms will actually leverage certain AI techniques and embed it within their algorithms for suggesting content that you should watch or suggesting things for you to follow and whatnot. Navigational apps tend to use AI in a certain extent when it comes to providing the best route when you're navigating through traffic and all these sort of different hosts and stuff. And so that nicely leads us into, well, what is generative AI? And what's the difference between traditional artificial intelligence and this new sort of wave of generative AI that everyone is sort of running towards, and it's being held as this utopian tool that can essentially either put us out of a job or make us 100 times more efficient. Well, hopefully by the end of this course, you'll be sitting more on the latter, as it'll be make you more efficient, and it will actually empower you to do your job a lot better. And let's be honest, save you some time that you get that time back during the day, because that's what really matters. But really simply, generative AI refers to artificial intelligence and the wing of AI that can generate new content or data that resembles human generated examples. And so that's essentially what the generative means. It just means generated. So that's where you see things such as large language models. Can I get a quick show of hands who's used ChatGPT before? Wonderful. So Nicholas has, Dan has, Rebecca, Kevin. Okay, perfect. So somewhat a lot of people have used ChatGPT here. If you haven't, not to worry. We'll be going through that as well. And by the end of the session, you would have used it at least once. And so whenever we interact with that, typically that the whole element of it being generative is that the response you get back is somewhat unique. Now, there's nuances to that sort of response, nuances to that explanation, but to a certain degree, it's going to be unique to what's the word? To say the least. I lost my train of thought. And so, yeah, does that make sense in terms of the difference between generative AI and sort of the holistic AI field is that makes thumbs up if that makes sense, thumbs down if it doesn't? Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, Jacqueline. Thank you, Candice. Much appreciated. So, how does AI work? Now, again, a very straightforward explanation is that AI is just essentially a computer program. It's not this so to speak, this Terminator-esque, self-conscious device and being, whatnot, that lives in the cloud and we can't access it. It's very simply, it's a computer program that's written with code and fed in information. And it essentially it has the ability to learn, think, and make decisions like a human, and it uses data and algorithms to solve problems and improve over time. And so that's where it becomes intelligent because it can improve in its responses and whatnot. So how can you create generative artificial intelligence? Well, it's a lot of maths, not math. I'll put that spell in there for you Americans just to appease you guys. But essentially, we're not going to get into that. End of the day, we really believe that championing people in the beginner stage of their learning career, by all means, like if you have any questions around the nuances, around the mathematics of neural networks, convoluted neural networks and whatnot, by all means, feel free to reach out to us and myself afterwards. More than happy to support any questions in that regard. But we're not going to be covering this. Instead, the main purpose of this program is to actually show you, actually empower you guys to be able to utilize and leverage generative AI tools as a means for you to do whatever you want with it. End of the day, we're the expert educators, but everyone here is an expert in their own personal domain, whether it be your work, your personal life, and you'll know where best that you can actually fit AI and use it in your own personal life. And that's for you to determine. And we want to empower you to do that. So what are large language models? Has anyone come across this term before? Does anyone feel brave enough to take a gander at trying to give an explanation? There's no wrong answers. Uh, by all means, if you want to have a go, by all means. If not, anyone up for the taking? No? No? Okay, I'll take the communal silence as a response. Um, There's a lot of text. Do not worry. This is being recorded. So by all means, in the recordings, if you want to come back and read through this, you're more than welcome to. But to quickly branch over it, large language models are their own branch of generative AI. We'll be looking at different elements of things. So you have LLMs, you have actually video generation, you have image generation and whatnot. And there's a lot more around the scope, but we'll be covering that. Like I said, this is session one. We'll be covering a lot more of that in future weeks. But large language models are linked to AI in several ways. So they train using AI techniques such as deep learning. They use things such as natural language processing, and they're often used in conjunction with other AI services such as chatbots and virtual assistants. And essentially, what they do is that they are computer programs that are fed, that are basically built upon certain algorithms. If you don't know what this means, don't worry, it's tech jargon. If it completely goes over your head, that's completely fine. We're only 13 minutes into the first session, so don't worry about it all landing. It takes time to marinate. But essentially, they're algorithms wherein which you input data, so you feed it information, and then from there, it can then do really cool stuff such as generate text, translate into from like English to different languages with higher degree of accuracy that Google Translate can never do, and write different types of creative content and answer your questions in an informative way and mirror that human-like interaction, which is very different. They're constantly changing. And so we're actually going to be looking at in a minute, how can you figure out what large language model is good for and which one you should be using for a particular task. And that is a skill which we really encourage, and we want to actually make sure that all of our learners are walking away from our sessions with that ability to do so, because that is a skill in of itself. So you don't need to know what happens underneath the hood. You just need to know what, let's say, the engine is actually doing, and what, let's say, if you want to use an analogy of a car, how fast the car goes and sort of the metrics around there. I've rambled on a lot. Thumbs up if that makes sense. thumbs down if you're kind of there, but you're sort of in the middle, and even still if you're kind of unsure. And we can take a quick pause there to take any immediate questions if anyone has one. Feel free to put it in the chat. If anyone has any questions. For those of you who have joined us as I was rambling on, I do a lot of that in these series, so apologies in advance. Please do make sure that you check in for today's session. It just allows us to send you the recording of the program and also track your attendance so that we can issue you your certificate of completion at the end of the 10-week program. All right, no questions. Okay, cool. Guess I'm doing a good job today. Wonderful. Um, cool. So specific examples of large language models also extend outside of, let's say, the what's it called? Jacqueline, I'll get to your question just once I cover this slide. So really good question, by the way. Excuse me. So they extend outside the realm of just interacting and asking, oh, can you solve this? Can you read through this PDF and just give me the summary of it? And it can actually be a bit further. I mean, text summarization is one element, but you've also got code generation. You can actually utilize LLMs to be full-on virtual assistants. They can be chatbots for different websites and whatnot. And it includes machine translation, which means, I mean, it means a few different things. But let's say you have a program written in one coding language, you can then pass it into a large language model, and it can translate it into a completely different other coding language. And that's a really useful skill that we're seeing right now. Jacqueline, you asked, I talk about large language models improving, who gives feedback, who grades LLM performance. So there'll be certain weightings. This goes quite technical, but I'll try and keep this a bit high level. Essentially, it's done by setting feedback parameters. So, for example, the first iterations of ChatGPT weren't going to be that great. So there was a human there that had to actually reply back and say, you know what, this wasn't good or this was good, and sort of provide that actual haptic feedback. Not sure haptic is the correct word, but we'll use it in this instance. And it's really important that that's where the human element of AI is so important by sense checking and whatnot. And there's sort of ethical considerations and disputes as you go later down the line when it comes to bias and whatnot. But we cover all that in session 7, which is my favorite. And I get to lecture and ramble on for a good half an hour. Everyone gets really bored, but we end that session doing some really fun stuff. So we'll leave that for about 6 weeks' time. I hope that answered your question. So let's get into the titans of the industry. So before we go into the slide, what I'm going to do is if you could open ChatGPT, I'm going to put in the notes here and Google's Gemini. And if you don't have an account, I do recommend you creating one. It's going to be very helpful, not only for these sessions, but also just in general in regards to sort of your personal life, because I do believe everyone should be trying to leverage AI tools where and when they can. So by all means, if you don't mind opening it up and logging in, and once you've done that, if you can put a thumbs up in the chat, and then we can go from there. Thank you, Nicholas. We'll just give about 30 seconds. I need to stop sharing my screen really quickly. So we'll see what happens here. If you can pop in the chat once you've got those two open. Thank you, Jacqueline. Thank you, Kevin. Thank you, Stephanie. Thank you, John. Thank you, Shushma. Wonderful. All right then. Can everyone see my screen then? Can I get a thumbs up if you guys can see my screen? Wonderful. Thank you, Candice. Appreciate that, Kevin. Cheers, Dan. So on the surface level, when it comes to interacting with different tools such as Claude, ChatGPT, Gemini, Perplexity, well, Gemini is now, well, Bard is deprecated, it's now Gemini. It can seem quite on a surface level that these are essentially the same thing, right? When it comes to playing around with them. I mean, if I ask, we can ask some question. Can someone give me something to test both services, something to put into ChatGPT that you may have used personally before? Someone can give me an example, something to put in?
Maybe what's the nicest place to visit in July in the world?
What's the nicest place to visit? That's going to be a controversial one, Nicholas, but I like that. Nicest place to visit um, in July. Yep. So if you put that into here, and then let's put it also into Gemini, we can see that, they both give us different. I mean, Gemini's telling us to go to the Mediterranean, so Portugal, Spain, or head into Kenya. I think Gemini thinks I have money. I need to probably give it some feedback saying I can't afford a trip to Kenya. Japan as well, definitely can't afford that. Versus, well, we've got Japan here. We've also got the Amalfi Coast in Italy. So as we can see here, they look quite similar in that respect, and we kind of expected that they would operate in the same format. But this is where it's actually really a critical and key skill to understand what goes on underneath the hood. So if I head back to here, when it comes to the two different models, they are completely different large language models. And you tend not to see the difference until you are actually using these tools in a somewhat strenuous way. So when you're going past, not necessarily trying to figure out where you want to go on holiday, but when you're saying, I need to perform these X, Y, and Z tools that require nuance, that require context and a lot of feedback and sort of engineering within itself. And so going through the different types of models, it's really easy to use these two as a basis, as ChatGPT is something that's known as a generative pre-trained transformer. And what that means is that it was created and it was fed a whole lot of data and then it was let into the world. So it was pre-trained in terms of up until now, sorry, not now, I think up until a few months ago, you couldn't ask ChatGPT who won the Euros, the Euro football tournament in 2021, as it didn't have access to that information. Now things are slightly different, but on the general premise, it's done all of its training pre-hand, prior to it being released. The difference with Gemini is that it's actually linked to Google search engine. So a lot of the times it's more of a factual language model, where in which it's really good at actually finding bits of information and whatnot, and actually searching the internet and leveraging that data set, which is constantly being updated and linked to Google. That's the easy way to think about it. In terms of ChatGPT, up until recently was isolated, meaning that its knowledge was limited, versus Gemini has always been linked to Google, so it's very factual in that sense. And it comes with its pros and cons. So for ChatGPT, it's fantastic when it comes to creating generative text. So sorry, generating creative text. So when it comes to writing short stories, when it comes to let's say, well, stories is a really good one, but then also reshaping emails and whatnot, and sort of changing the language and a nuance and tone of voice and whatnot. For copywriting, if you have any marketers here, it's better than Gemini. Mostly because Gemini, again, is a factual language model. And so what that means is that its main strength is actually providing summaries of factual topics, and instead that data aggregation aspect of things. Now, the drawbacks with the two is that sometimes ChatGPT does something that we call hallucinates, where it essentially tells a fib, it lies, it makes stuff up. There was actually a very famous case, I believe last year, where a lawyer got ChatGPT to create oh God, this is where my legal knowledge is really pushed. I think it's something like a deposition or something like that, but basically present like a case notes. And what ChatGPT ended up doing is it just made up cases that never happened. And when the lawyer went to present it, he got fined a lot of money, and I think he got some jail time. So definitely don't do that if you're a lawyer. And yeah, that's almost like my self-protection. This is me telling you don't do that. However, Gemini, some of the weaknesses is that it's not as creative as ChatGPT. So though it has some strengths, and bear in mind these things are improving on a daily basis, it's not going to be as good at, let's say, reformatting emails or creating short stories or maybe writing poems as such as ChatGPT may. Thumbs up if that makes sense. Thumbs down if that doesn't. And any questions, please do feel free to pop it in the chat. So Stephanie asked earlier, I looked for descriptions of systems thinking with citations. What do you mean, Stephanie? If you could provide some clarification on that, really appreciate that. And then Shivani says, how do we decide which one to use them? That's a really good question, Shivani. Over the course of this program, we'll be doing several exercises that you'll slowly build up this sort of mental muscle that you'll know where and which each tool is most appropriate for. So it's very difficult for me to say from the jump, you know, ChatGPT is great for X, Y, Z, and it's great for these sort of tools. However, at the same time, as things go along the line, you'll get to understand, oh, okay, I know ChatGPT's strengths are in creative writing, and that applies to these aspects of what I need to do or these tasks that can perform. Hope that made sense. So from there, we actually got some tasks. So if you want to head to, you can pick either one. Ideally, you do both. If we run out of time, do not worry. You can always come back and watch the recordings and follow along here. But if you want to open up ChatGPT, and I love doing this exercise, it's the funniest one ever. If you navigate to ChatGPT and you can ask it to write a prompt, no, you need to write a prompt to rewrite a modern song of your choice as a Shakespeare sonnet. We've had Taylor Swift, we've had Lil Wayne, we've had Flo Rida, we've had, I think someone did Celine Dion, but then again, like Celine Dion, Shakespeare, not too far off, so go figure. So please do try that. And then for Gemini, if you want to test it out, you can head over to Gemini and get it to write a blog about the top 5 chocolate dessert trends of 2023. If you don't like chocolate, I think that's a whole nother issue. However, you can feel free to pick a dessert of your liking. And please do feel free to share share the creations in the chat afterwards for people to see. And if you need some inspiration, we like to say we're a community here. You guys have joined the Codex community, so please do feel free to ask, and I'm sure people can lend a hand. Kendall asks, I've experienced incorrect responses from Gemini. Is there a way to prompt it to get more accurate responses? That's a really good question, Kendall. That's something which we're going to be covering more, I believe, in session 3. Or yeah, sorry, next week actually, when we look at prompt engineering and crafting effective prompts, and it's something where in which we also cover that in session 5 when we look at automating research. And unfortunately, these AI tools aren't these utopian services, and so it always does require us to do a human check of sort of information, and particularly spot checks as well. I was talking to some the team over at Financial Times recently, and they were sort of saying, yeah, we want to let everyone sort of go off and use ChatGPT for everything and all their research, and we had to put our hands up kind of awkwardly and say, please don't do that, because you're going to get a lot of inaccuracies coming out in your publishing. And so, yeah, anytime. Jory, if the prompt is the same, would ChatGPT and Gemini generate the same response for everyone, or it might vary based on previous task history? That's a really good question, Jory. To quickly answer that, I've closed let me just do this and do that. So to answer that, its memory, things are changing quite quickly. But essentially, the way you can think about it is the memory of a large language model, particularly with these tools such as ChatGPT, it only exists within this particular chat, and it has context knowledge from here. There are certain instances where you can say provide system-wide context and system-wide memory, but we're not really going to cover that here because it can get a bit difficult and quite technical. So we cover that later on. But typically, if you take the same prompt in ChatGPT and Gemini, it should give you, depending on the prompt, different responses, given the fact that they are 2 different pieces of software to think about. But if you just say, what is the opposite to up, both will say down. So it really depends on the type of prompt you're giving.
Well, I guess, sorry, my question is more like, Faz, if you text the same prompt and I, Jory, text the same prompt, we
Mm.
get the same results, or it will kind of based on like personalized based on, my own
Yeah.
search histories, and Faz, you might have a different search history than
Yeah,
me.
no. Okay, yeah, that makes more sense. So again, I have to give a politician's answer. It really depends. Because end of the day, I have all this context built up here, but at the same time, ChatGPT are changing things such that if we put in the same prompt to a fresh chat, it could give us the same output. But typically, it's kind of rare that it will give it word for word. But then again, it depends what we're asking. It doesn't have context on your cookies or your browsing history or any other bit of information, well, at least here in the EU, because they would be in gross violation of something known as GDPR, which is a very stringent and data privacy act. But in essence, it's potentially, but very unlikely if we are both giving it let's say a 200 word prompt. It's unlikely it will do that. I hope that explained it.
Yeah, thank you.
Wonderful. Lonnie, share the results. Share the results. I want to see. I love reading through a couple Sonics and whatnot. Um, so rewriting the essence of Kokomo. Hmm. I'm not gonna lie. Let's make sure my age. No idea what that is. Is that a song? Who's that by? Maybe it's the fact that Candace is celebrating. So go figure. Paul Simons, you can call me out. Beach Boys. Yeah, okay, yeah. Listen, I know of Beach Boys, but someone stopped me in the street and said I'll pay you £5 to name me two of their songs. I would be walking away with probably a negative £5 at that rate. But that's really cool to see. Please do feel free to paste your answers into the chat. It's great to give other people inspiration and show that other people are working at this. Um, Sandy did Earth, Wind, and Fire. Dost thou remember the night of September when love's bright? Hey, I might copy this and send this to some friends afterwards. But it's always quite cool to see. Oh, Audrey did the same. Wonderful. I guess, Jory, to your point then, if we have a look, Audrey and Sandy both used, I mean, the prompts would be slightly different, but the objective was the same, right? Taking the song and converting it into, um, excuse me, converting it into a Shakespearean sonnet. And they both came away with very different outputs. So I think that might have been something. Nicholas has managed to. Well, at least we have our first person in the course who did this. This always happens. Nicholas, congratulations, Nicholas, who crashed ChatGPT, which is an achievement in of itself, because that means that you're really pushing it. So well done. Nice. He's using Freebird. That's really cool to see. Cool. If everyone's happy to move on, if you can put a thumbs up in the chat. We've got 15 minutes left. Normally run slightly over 5, 10 minutes just to accommodate for questions. Um, Wonderful. Thank you, Jacqueline. Dan is teaching all of us Dutch. And yeah, can't understand it, Dan, but that's still pretty cool. Wonderful. Nice. So in the essence of time, we're going to move on. As I mentioned, this is recorded. Slides you can catch up in the content center that will be emailed to you at the end of the session. It'll be either tom or mainly be tomorrow, probably be over the weekend. As I need to head to up north to Manchester after this, as my sister's graduating, which is always interesting. Um, so I think one thing that we really like to share with learners is this sort of, thank you, Candice, is this research bank. And this is one of my favorite tools to date. And it's this very simple website with awesome ChatGPT prompts. Now, the skill of prompt writing is something that is nuanced and takes time to develop and whatnot. So trust me, by the end of this program, you will be Jedi prompt writers. If you don't want to use the word Jedi, you'll be master prompt writers. We've actually had someone who took this program, took their certificate of completion, and went on to apply for a prompt engineer role at a company. So we really do try and build that skill because it's a muscle like anything, like coding, like counting, like anything. But to set everyone up for success from the get-go, this is a really handy resource that I do still use to this day because as you can see, prompts can be very long. It has a whole host of different aspects of things. So for example, let's say if I'm using the bane of most people's professional lives, Excel, and I have a question, it already has a nice, tidy, pre-formatted, pre-created prompt that I can use. I can tweak it slightly, and then I can sort of deploy that into ChatGPT and sort of go through there. And even here, it's a great resource, and I'll share it in a chat. Um, Chat GPT prompt bank. It's a great resource to use in terms of like sort of getting the flavor of what can, you know, large language models do and how far can we push things. I mean, it even has here act as a football commentator, which that's even news to me looking at this. I don't think I've spotted that one before. So it's really, really handy and whatnot. Um, cool. So if you want to definitely take a look at that. Then another aspect is for OpenAI's guide for writing prompts. This looks very technical, but for anyone who wants to have a deeper dive into the content here, understanding the tactics from the makers themselves, this doesn't just apply to ChatGPT. Though it's optimized, as we previously just learned, the differences between the different large language models, it does always help to have this on hand and given just a quick read through. It can seem a bit overwhelming, so don't worry if it's something that you don't really want to have a look at. But I do recommend reading through prompt writing guide. And finally, a guide for generating images. So this is one of my favorite aspects when it comes to um, ChatGPT is that they've now made this, I believe, free of charge with the new model GPT 4.0. And I'll show you in a second how you can identify um, whether you have access to that. How to generate images. Wonderful. And so just to quickly go over that, if you want to see whether you have the capabilities for actually generating images, at the top left-hand side of the screen, if you can see where I'm hovering my mouse over, I'll zoom in quickly. You can see a little drop down here. And if you hit that, I pay for the premium. Just to preface the course, we do not encourage you to pay for anything. All the tools that we show you throughout the program are completely free of charge or have a free trial that you can utilize and kind of exploit it to the best of means. We really don't recommend going out and paying for something until you know that it's a perfect fit for you. And even still, if your company can pay for it, a win's a win. So that's what we recommend. But a good way to sort of tell whether you have access to it, and it's a newest model that they launched, I believe, a few months ago. And you should see a drop down here, and you can select GPT 4.0. So you want to go there and you know what, we've got a bit of time. If someone wants to give me, let's see how far we can push the image capabilities of ChatGPT and its image generation. If someone wants to give me a prompt or a scenario that we can try and generate, previously we've had a hippopotamus playing a harpsichord in the form of a Picasso picture. We've also had then King Kong on the Empire State Building, celebrating his birthday. So the stakes are high, guys. So if someone wants to give me a little suggestion, you can generate that and see what it comes up with. If you've got any suggestions, please do feel free to put it in the chat. And here's always the sky's the limit. So please do suggest something. Okay, so John's given us a street scene of animals in the style of Joe Meyerowitz, I want to say. Should we try that? Or Rebecca said polar bears playing poker in impressionist form. We've got some very artsy people here. So let's try with John's and see what that generates. So it's coming up with an image. Takes a little bit of time. Oh, unfortunately, this is one of the issues that we do run in terms of its policy. So in regards, probably there's a little bit of code embedded within ChatGPT to say if you like impersonate the style of someone, then to sort of prevent the creation of fakes and whatnot, because it can be very powerful. Can't unfortunately do that. So let's try Rebecca's one, and if not, we can then go to Jory's. Let's try that. Polar bears playing poker in impressionist form. And so let's see if that can generate that for us. You know what? I think that's pretty good. Thumbs up. People thought that was all right. Yeah, people approve. Yep. I think we struck gold there. Thank you, Rebecca. Lonnie would buy it. Well, oh, damn, but Lonnie, that could be a whole business. So who knows, right? Who knows? So you know what? I think this is going to be our cohort's mascot. As mentioned before, we generate an image in the first session, and that becomes the cohort's mascot. So I think polar bears. There we go, excuse me. Polar bears playing poker in a impressionist form is going to be the cohort mascot. That's what's quite cool. All right then. So moving on. We are slightly short of time, so we're going to skip over these exercises and we're going to move to something that is really cool and one of my favorite aspects of things. Custom GPTs, just to give you a quick rundown of what they are. Does anyone know what custom GPT is? Anyone wants to volunteer and explaining? No? 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 It's all right. By the third lesson, we'll all be friends here. People will be coming off mute and it'll be all great. Essentially, a good way to think about what custom GPTs are, and I will share one from, let me go here. If I open one here. So as we know, ChatGPT is a pre-trained large language model, so it's already been fed a bunch of data and information to learn on. But if you want to create your own custom GPT, it essentially allows you to then funnel your expertise information into on top of whatever ChatGPT already knows, and it allows you to give a really tailored experience and tool that becomes really helpful. Companies use this for their onboarding when it comes to knowledge bases. Um, let's say you're an expert watercolor painter, and you know a whole lot of things about that realm. You could input your expertise, your domain knowledge into ChatGPT and just build on a really cool and custom instance that people can query and is really helpful. Thumbs up if that makes sense. I will go back to the slides here just so that people can see. Please do feel free to come back to this in the recordings and whatnot. But here I want to talk about one of my favorite tools, and I think it's something that really does um, push and show the sort of depth and how far AI tools can actually go. And this is Amazon's Party Rock service. So I'll just open the site up. So what this allows you to do, Amazon released this, I believe last year, late last year. Party Rock. And essentially what it allows us to do is we can take a single line. So as we can see here, we can take a single line a prompt saying we want to create an app for X, and it will go away and kind of regularly generate the app for us. And that we actually play around with, need no coding tools, no coding knowledge whatsoever. We don't need to do anything. We just give it a single prompt and we go from there. So for example, one things that we do here at Coding with Codex is that we are autism friendly, and we believe that more education should be accessible to people who are neurodiverse. So one of our internal teaching policies is that everything that we do, we create, we teach, irrespective of whoever we're teaching it to, it has to be able to be taught to a young person, a 9-year-old with autism. And what that means is that things have to be very literal. We can't use metaphors. Even using the word like is sort of taken away from our vocabulary, particularly when it comes to teaching our young people. So if we were to go here and say, create me an app that will take a topic and explain it to a 9-year-old with autism. Please ensure that explanations do not use metaphors or analogies. Spell analogies wrong. And if you create, and in a true Bob Ross fashion, or no, Blue Peter. Americans, what's your equivalent of Blue Peter? Kid show where they make stuff and they're like, oh, we're going to create something, but here's what I did earlier. Ta-da. Anyway, I'll figure it out. It did it quite quickly here. But
Bob,
go for it, Candice.
Bob the Builder.
Oh, sorry, Bob the Builder. Oh, who said that? I can't see who that was. Forgive me, I can't. If you, I'm so sorry, I didn't catch who said that. But Bob the Builder, there we go. As we can see here, I did this earlier, and it spun it up actually quite quickly just now. So that shows you the speed in which you can create sort of like demos and different cool things like that. And so let's actually see how far we can go. So if someone was to give me a very adult, complicated topic that I can provide it, and let's see how well it can perform. Poetry. Should we pick something that's more difficult to explain? Something like well, I think Nicholas, you were coming off mute to say something.
Yeah, how about an explanation of the tax bracket?
Oh gosh, I may need this one. uh should we do explain tax brackets? Let's try that. And already as we're typing, you can see the explanation sort of formulating and whatnot. It's generating. And so the explanation that is given us is tax brackets are different levels of income where the government takes a different percentage of your money as tax when you earn money. I mean, people can read this. That took 30 seconds to create the app and actually deploy it. And already we have a tool that we leverage sometimes when it comes to trying to create explanations, or sometimes we can't, it's sort of a je ne sais quoi missing from our explanations. And we use these tools very regularly. And it can be anything. You can find, and there's really good examples on the actual Party Rock homepage. So you can do a podcast generator for anyone who wants to start the next Joe Rogan podcast or whatever that may be. You can do good eats, movie recommendations, and everything such and such forth. And so, yeah, I do recommend playing around with it. We are at the end of the session though. So unfortunately, we'll have to start wrapping up here. And so just to give you a sneak preview of what is to come in future weeks, just so that you can understand what is to be laying ahead. So we have sessions coming up on crafting effective prompts, ChatGPT add-ons for Google Chrome. So how can you actually enhance your browsing experience, shaving off 20 seconds here, 30 seconds here, even 20 minutes? How can we use large language models and generative AI to acquire new skills and whatnot? And even building our own websites within half an hour. But that's for next week, actually. I guess to wrap up here, we've covered a lot of content. We've looked at the difference between sort of different large language models, how to understand, difference between a, let's say, factually led model versus a pre-trained generative creative model such as ChatGPT. We've seen a limitation with them, but we've also got a resource bank of the various different things that we can use. Please do utilize prompts.chat, the resource bank that I shared earlier. It's really, really helpful, particularly as we get started into this journey. And so, yeah, I just wanted to congratulate you all for taking your first step into generative AI and sort of open up the floor for any questions.
What's the best way to verify the answers you get from ChatGPT?
It really comes down to sort of like a holistic nature. I think it's something where in which even just doing spot checking, when it comes to doing things in regards to, if you receive 20 different facts back, you can then just take a random few and just sort of cross-check them yourself. We'll be going through more tools later on in the program, and I'll give you a sneak preview now. If people can stay around, this is really handy just to have in your sort of resource bank. So let's say we want to go to Microsoft. Let's say we just search this up. Perplexity is a really good tool because it combines sort of the elements of ChatGPT for creative writing, but then also for the thank you, Dan. That's such a lovely thing to say. And yeah, okay, thank you for the year you've given me for that. In regards to, it gives us a really good sort of explanation and whatnot for when we put things in there, but it also provides us with what's it called, citations, and that's really, really powerful. Not everyone's doing it, more people are moving towards it. But this is where sort of understanding I guess a multiverse of AI tools, if you really want to call it, is really important because this is where we know where to essentially utilize certain things in different aspects, and not necessarily put like 100% reliance on a particular tool. I hope that made sense. And if it didn't, please let me know, and I hope that I can refine the answer.
Sorry, just follow up. Are we able to ask the ChatGPT to provide us the links to their like answers?
So yes and no. So if it's taking information from the internet, you can get citations for that, and you can get the links and references. However, if it's from its pre-trained information and it's information from within, that was fed by the developers, it can't really cite that. And so that's where it kind of blurs the line between hallucinating and then versus like actually giving you accurate information.
Perfect, thank you.
Anytime. Just to Jacqueline's point about best way to sign up for future classes. So unfortunately, we don't, well, if you checked in, please make sure to do that because we will email you with notifying you when the signups are going to be open. It'll be the beginning of the week on Monday. However, you do have to head to, and I'll just show you here, edu.perksatwork.com. It's the community online academy. Typically, you'll find our class just sort of hovering there or in the live classes section for next week. It opens, I believe, 12:15 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, no, Eastern Standard Time. I'm not sure they're the same thing, but I believe they're different. So sort of like East Coast of the US on Friday every week. But in the recap emails, I will always send links for the following week session, or if I end up sending an email Monday, it'll be for the week session. So there, I'll always remind you guys anytime. Any other questions? Steve said, where will the recordings be? If YouTube, what is the link? It's a really good question, Steve. So if I just show you here, so this is what let's view site here. This is what the course content center looks like. As you can see here, we have it on a Notion website. You'll be sent the link for this. I do recommend bookmarking it. You know what? I'll put this in the chat now. It's really handy. Any updates and whatnot, we'll always put in here, we'll announce there, we'll email you guys. We try and be as transparent as possible. You can see some success stories from previous cohorts, so you're not just a dummy, you're not just the test cohort. We've done this before, and whatnot. And you can see here all the links to, I think this needs to be slightly updated, but all the links for also all following sessions and whatnot are all here. So I do recommend going through that as such. Coming up to 10 to 5 minutes over time. Any more for any more? Any questions? You're very welcome, Looper. Romag asks, any thoughts on Copilot? It's really, do you mean Microsoft Copilot or do you mean GitHub Copilot, Romag? Take care, Jacqueline. All the best, Josh. If Romag, if you're still here, you can clarify. Peter, may your favorite football sports sports team win. England will win the Euros. It's coming home. So yeah, I'll give you guys an update on that next week. But no, if there's no more any more for any more, if not, we can wrap up. Candice asks, my work computer doesn't allow me to access ChatGPT and other AI services. Should I bring my personal for this class? Well, if you can, Candice, if you can access, if you have a mobile device, conscious not everyone does, but if you do have access to a mobile device or a tablet, typically you can download the applications on here. Alternatively, for some sessions, it may be a bit more difficult because we do require, I believe, the spreadsheet superpower session, you do have to, it is better to have a browser. However, please do still come along. You can always just come along, soak it up, understand what's going on, and then you can always do it afterwards on a personal device if you have access to one. If not, I will put my email, well, you'll receive an email from myself, get in touch, and we can sort of find a way, workaround for that. So yeah. Anything else? Wonderful. Sounds good, Candice. All right then. So I need to shoot. I need to go take our very what's it called, temperamental rail service here in the UK from London Euston Station in about half an hour. So I will look forward to seeing you all next week. Please tell a colleague to tell a colleague, tell a friend to tell a friend. We'll mind the gap between the train and the platform. Tell your managers for here, as mentioned, every time you guys learn with us, we reinvest those resources back into community programs. I'm pleased to say we're working with a record number of community programs here in the UK, and we've also recently been working with local authorities to provide tech education for those people who do not have access to it. I hope you have a wonderful weekend, everyone. For those of you watching the Euros, I'm biting my nails just as much as you all. So hopefully we see a win on Sunday. Have a wonderful day, and yeah, I'll see you all next week. Take care, everyone. Bye.